Polluter-pay principle asserts that those responsible for environmental degradation must bear the financial burden of remediation. This foundational concept in environmental law and policy traces its origins to antiquity as reflected in the Pluto's dictum: if anyone intentionally spoils the water of another, let him not only pay damages but purify the stream which contains the water. Greetings once again. I am your host Harshit Sinha, bringing you an insightful discussion on the Polluter-pay principle, environmental justice and responsibility. The principle remains profoundly relevant today, emphasizing accountability for ecological harm. It serves as a mechanism to instill awareness about the consequences of environmental misconduct, which not only disrupt the ecosystems but also endangers human existence. Even unintentional polluters acting out of the ignorance bear the culpability under this doctrine, ensuring the preservation of environmental equilibrium. This discussion dwells into the historical evaluation, conceptual foundation, economic ramification, and global application of polluter-pay principle. We will analyze its implementation across various jurisdictions, examine its effectiveness in mitigating pollution. Additionally, we will explore its strengths and limitations as a legal and economic tools for promoting environmental justice and sustainable development. So stay tuned for an interesting in-depth exploration of this critical issue. The Polluter-pay principle embodies a profound philosophical and legal stance on environmental responsibility, as articulated by J. Moffat and B. Barregay in the role of law in the promotion of sustainable development in 1996. This principle asserts that the community, not the polluter, holds collective ownership over the environment. By mandating that polluter bear the cost of the damage they inflict, the PPP ensure that environmental degradation is not merely externalities but an economic liabilities. Conversely, if the community were to compensate polluter for reducing harm, it would tacitly endorse the environmental exploitation, imply that the right to pollute supersedes the right to clean and sustainable environment. The polluter-pay principle represents a fundamental shift from the unchecked exploitation of natural resources to a model of the community stewardship and ecological accountability. It serves as a cornerstone of environmental law and policy, ensuring that those who deplete our degraded resources internalize the full cost of their action. This principle not only discourages the reckless environment harm, but also incentivizes sustainable practice by integrating environmental cost into economic decision making. Across global jurisdiction, the polluter-pay principle have been instrumental in shaping carbon taxation, emission trading scheme, and industrial regulation. By holding polluter financially responsible, it fosters an economic structure where the sustainability becomes an imperative rather than afterthought. However, its implementation varies, often facing resistance from industries seeking the externalized environmental cost. Ultimately, the polluter-pay principle is a powerful tool for environmental justice, reinforcing the idea that the environment is a shared legacy, not a commodity for unrestricted exploitation. Its continued evolution will determine the extent to which the society can balance economic growth with ecological integrity, ensuring a greater, more sustainable future for generations to come. The polluter-pay principle serves as a fundamental tenet of environmental governance, grounded in a simple yet powerful ethos. Those responsible for creating pollution must bear the cost of addressing its impact, rather than being punitive. The principle takes a restorative stance, focusing on repairing ecological harm and ensuring that the environmental damage does not persist unchecked. By prioritizing accountability over the assigned blame, the polluter-pay principle aligns with the broader goal of fostering sustainable practice. The appeal of polluter-pay principle lies in its inherent fairness, resonating across diverse societal and policy spheres. It mirrors an intuitive sense of justice that individuals or entities causing harm must shoulder the responsibility for remedying it. This principle safeguards against the unfair transfer of environmental burden onto innocent parties, including the community, ecosystem, or future generation. Such equitability allocation of responsibility underpin its widespread acceptance and legitimize. At its core, the Polluter-pay principle is deeply rooted in economic theory, particularly the concept of externalities. Environmental degradation, once treated as a free cost external to market transaction, is redefined by Polluter-pay principle as an integral factor in the cost analysis. It ensures that the environmental cost of production, consumption, and the waste disposal are internalized rather than passed on the society at large. By holding polluters financially accountable, the principle not only mitigates the ecological harm but also incentivizes the cleaner, more sustainable practices through market mechanism. In essence, the polluter-pay principle is more than a regulatory principle. It is a call of fairness, justice, and economic responsibility in preserving the delicate balance of our shared environment. Its role in shaping sustainable policy framework makes it cornerstone for contemporary environmental stewardship. Now let us explore the functions of the polluter-pay principle. The polluter-pay principle, that is PPP, serve as a fundamental environmental policy tool, ensuring that the polluters bear the financial responsibility for their environmental impact. It operates through four key functions. First, remediation. The restorative function focuses on repairing the environmental damage by requiring polluters to fund cleanup and restoration efforts. This ensures that the ecosystem affected by the pollution are rehabilitated, restoring them to their previous state. For instance, industries responsible for oil spill deforestation must invest in ecosystem restoration projects. The next is related with the compensation. The redistributive function ensures compensation for those harmed by pollution. It transfers the financial resources from polluter to victim, addressing health damages, loss of livelihood, and environmental degradation. In India, the Public Liability Assurance Act of 1991 mandates industry handling hazardous substances to provide compensation to affected communities. Next is related to prevention. The prevention function corrects market failure by internalizing the external environmental cost. By imposing financial liabilities, PPP creates an economic incentive for pollution reduction and cleaner production method. This approach encourages businesses to adopt sustainable technologies such as energy efficient manufacturing and the waste minimization strategy. And the last is related with the deterrence. The punitive function discourages future pollution by making environmental harmful activities financially unviable. The regulatory framework imposes fines, penalties, and liabilities cost on polluter, deterring non-compliance. The National Green Tribunal, that is NGT in India, enforces stringent penalties for environmental violation, reinforcing the deterrent effect of polluter-pay principles. This slide discusses how polluter-pay principle is linked with the environmental policy tools. The polluter-pay principle is a vital environmental policy tool that ensures polluters bear the financial responsibility for their environmental impact. By integrating the economic, regulatory, and the physical mechanism, the polluter-pay principle promotes a sustainable development while balancing the environmental protection with the economic growth. The first is related with the economic balances, is a core aspect of the PPP, ensuring that the cost of pollution is shifted from the society to the polluter. This prevents the industries from externalizing the environmental damage while fostering the responsible corporate behavior. By making pollution a direct financial liability, PPP encourages the business to invest in a cleaner production, technology, and the sustainable resource management. The taxation approach under PPP is implemented through environmental taxes and levies. In India, examples include the cost cess, now GST compensation cess, water cess, and the vehicle green tax. These taxes generate revenue for environmental programs while incentivizing pollution reduction. Similarly, plastic waste management taxes encourages producers to adopt eco-friendly alternatives aligned with the extended producer responsibility policies. Next is related with the internalizing the externalities. The fundamental goal of PPP, pollution and environmental degradation often impose hidden costs on society such as health issues and ecosystem damage. By incorporating these costs into the market transaction, PPP ensured that the businesses account for their environmental footprint, promoting long-term sustainability. A strong regulatory framework supports the effective implementation of PPP, that is Polluter Pay Principle. In India, the Environmental Impact Assessment, that is EIA, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, that is BRSR, and the National Green Tribunal, that is NGT, enforces the compliance by combining the market-based instrument with the stringent regulation. PPP serves as a cornerstone of environmental governance. This slide discusses about the environmental policy application. Environmental policies serve as a crucial mechanism for sustainable development by addressing the environmental challenges through regulatory, economic, and institutional framework. Its application is guided by key principles such as internalizing externalities, ensures that the environmental cost of economic activities such as pollution and resource depletions are accounted in production and consumption decision. Market-based instruments like environmental tax, emission trading scheme, extended producer responsibility, that is EPR, impose financial liabilities on the polluters, aligning economic incentives with sustainability goals. Next is related with the promoting efficiency. Promoting efficiency is essential for optimizing resource use and minimizing waste. Environmental policies encourages industries to adopt clean technology, circular economic model, and energy efficient processes. Market mechanisms such as carbon pricing and the green subsidies drive investment in sustainable innovation while ensuring cost-effective pollution control. The third is related with the advancing justice in environmental policy ensures equitable distribution of environmental benefit and burdens. Policies like pollution compensation funds, environmental liabilities insurance, and climate adaptation program protects vulnerable communities from environmental harm. Additionally, public participation in decision making fosters inclusive governance. Next is related with the harmonizing policy across sectors and regions ensure coherence between environmental and economic objectives. Integrating environmental concern into industrial policy, trade regulations, and urban planning prevents conflicts and promotes sustainability across multiple domains. International agreements like the Paris Climate Accord exemplify global policy harmonization. Another is allocating cost equitable between the stakeholder ensures financial responsibility for environmental damage. Instruments like Polluter-pay-Principle, green bonds, and the corporate sustainability reporting creates accountability while mobilizing the resource for environmental restorations. Now we shall discuss the core concept internalizing the environmental cost. Internalizing the environmental cost is a fundamental principle of sustainable development, ensuring that the true cost of environmental degradation is reflected in economic decision making. This approach prevents environmental damage from being treated as an externality and instead integrates it into market transaction, promoting responsible resource use and pollution control. One of the key aspects is the valuation of the environmental assets and services. Natural ecosystems provide essential services such as clean air, water purification, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity conservation. Assigning economic value to these services helps policymakers and the businesses recognize their significance, leading to better conservation and sustainable resource management. Techniques like contingent valuation, hedonic prices, and ecosystem service valuation are used to assess these costs accurately. Full life cycle costing is another critical component, considering the environmental impact of a product or services throughout its entire life cycle, from raw material extraction to production, usage, and disposal. By factoring in environmental cost and each stage, industries can identify sustainable alternatives, reduce waste, and enhance resource efficiency. Extended Producer Responsibility, that is EPR scheme, ensures that the manufacturers bear the cost of recycling and the waste management, reducing long-term environmental burden. The cost-effective environmental solution ensures that the environmental protection measures are economically viable. Strategies such as the carbon pricing, green taxes, and emission trading system, and the pollution control incentives encourages business to adopt eco-friendly technologies while minimizing the financial burden. Governments can further support this transition through subsidies for renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and the circular economic initiatives. Now we shall discuss about the implementation approaches to Polluter-pay principles. The Polluter-pay principles is implemented through various regulatory economic mechanisms to ensure that the polluters bear the financial burden of environmental damage. The three principal approaches include: first, CAC regulation. This traditional regulatory approach sets legal binding limits on the emission, waste disposal, and the resource uses. Governments enforce compliance through emission standards, environmental permits, and pollution control mandates. Non-compliance result in penalties, legal action, or operational restriction. CAC ensures uniform compliance but may lack flexibility, leading to inefficiency in cost allocations. Next is market-based instrument, that is MBIS. MBIs create economic incentives for pollution reduction by internalizing environmental cost into business operation. These include carbon pricing, pollution taxes, emission trading schemes, cap and trade, and extended producer responsibility program. MBIs allows businesses to choose cost-effective pollution control strategy while fostering innovation in cleaner technology. Next is related with the subsidies elimination. Many environmental issues arise due to government subsidies that encourages resource overuse and the pollution, such as fossil fuels subsidies. Removing subsidies for non-renewable energies, water-intensive industries, and the environmentally harmful practices promote the true cost of environmental impact. Instead, subsidies can be redirected towards renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and the green infrastructure to align economic growth with sustainability goals. Now we shall discuss comparing the implementation approaches, the most interesting topic. The Polluter-pay principle is implemented through different mechanisms, each with distinct advantages and disadvantages. Four primary approaches offers a varying level of enforcement, flexibility, and economic efficiency. The first is related with the command and control, that is CAC. This traditional regulatory approach involves direct regulation like emission limits and the pollution control standards. The advantage ensures certainty in the pollution reduction and legally enforceable with a clear compliance requirement. The disadvantage could be rigid and costly for business and may lack flexibility in adapting to new technology. The examples are the India's Air Prevention and Control Pollution Act of 1981, which sets emission standard for industries. The next is related with the market-based instruments, that is MBIS. MBIS such as carbon taxes, emission trading systems, that is cap and trade, and the pollution charges create financial incentives for polluters to reduce their environmental impact. Their advantages is to encourage innovation, cost efficiency, and flexibility in compliance, generate revenue for the environmental program. The disadvantages are required strong market infrastructure and monitoring risk of price volatility and the loopholes. Examples are the EU emission trading system, that is ETS, allows companies to trade carbon allowances, promoting cost-effective emission reduction. The next is related with the liability regimes. These legal frameworks hold polluter financial accountable for environmental damage, ensuring they compensate for harms caused. The advantages are to ensure polluter bear full remediation cost, deters negligent behavior, and strengthens the environmental justice. The disadvantage are legal disputes may delay action, high enforcement costs, and difficulty in attributing liabilities in the complex pollution case. Examples are the US Superfund program requires industries responsible for hazardous waste contamination to find cleanup efforts. The next is related with the voluntary agreements. Industries and the business commit to sustainability practices beyond legal requirement. The advantages are flexible, promotes corporate social responsibility, and fosters public-private collaboration, while the disadvantage are lack of enforcement, risk of greenwashing, and potential ineffective without regulating backing. The examples are the United Nations Global Compact encourages corporations to integrate environmental responsibility into operation. Now we shall discuss is what are the additional implementation challenges. The Polluter-pay principle faces several challenges in its implementation, including issues related to the common pool resources. The common pool resources, such as air, oceans, and groundwater, pose a significant challenge for implementation PPP. Since these resources are shared by multiple stakeholders across jurisdictions, it becomes difficult to assign responsibility for pollution. For instance, marine pollution often originates from multiple countries, making enforcement complex. The lack of clear ownership of the accountability can result in a tragedy of the commons, where the polluter exploits resource without bringing the full cost of damages. Next is related with the varying interpretation. Different countries and the legal frameworks interpret PPP in diverse way, leading to inconsistent application. While some nations enforce strict liabilities for pollution, others adopt more flexible approach, allowing industries to pay for the pollution control without necessarily reducing the emission. This variation interpretation results in regulatory loopholes and discrepancies in the environmental standard across regions. Additionally, different economic capacity and governance structures influence how PPP is implemented, making global coordination difficult. The next is related with the historical pollution. Addressing the historical pollution, also known as legacy pollution, present another challenges. Many industries have caused long-term environmental damage before strict regulations were in place. In such cases, determining liabilities and ensuring adequate compensation becomes difficult. Governments often bear the cost of remediation instead of the original polluter. As many as responsible entities no longer exist. Cleanup efforts for the contaminated sites, such as the abandoned minings or industrial roads, require significant public investment, making it challenging to apply PPP retroactively. These challenges highlights the need for improved enforcement mechanism, international cooperation, and adaptive policies to effectively implement the polluter-pay principles. This slide discusses about the economic rationale behind the polluter pays. The polluter-pay principle is a cornerstone of the environmental policy, ensuring that those responsible for the pollution bear the cost associated with its mitigation and management. This approach is grounded in several economic rationales. First is cost internalization. Traditionally, environmental degradation have been considered and externalities cost borne by the society rather than the polluter. PPP shifts these external costs back to the polluter, compelling them to account for environmental impact in their financial decision. By internalizing these costs, businesses are incentivized to adopt cleaner technologies and practices as they directly face the financial consequences of the pollution. The next is related with the efficient resource allocation. When the polluters are held financially accountable for environmental harm, it leads to more accurate pricing of goods and services that reflects their true environmental cost. This transparency encourages consumers to make informed choice favoring products with a lower environmental footprints. Consequently, resources are allocated more efficiently, promoting sustainable consumption and production pattern. The last is related with the preventive excessive entries. By imposing pollution cost on a producer, PPP acts as a deterrent against the politification of industries that may degrade the environment. When potential entrants recognize that they will be responsible for environmental costs, only those capable of operating sustainably are likely to enter the market. This mechanism helps prevent market oversaturation with the environmentally harmful businesses, fostering a more balanced and sustainable industrial landscape. In conclusion, the polluter-pay principle integrates environmental cost into economic activities, promoting sustainability through cost internalization, efficient resource use, and regulation of market entry to discourage the environmentally detrimental practice. Now let us explore what are the economic dimensions of this principle. The Polluter-pay Principle, that is PPP, is a foundational concept of environmental economics, ensuring that those responsible for pollution bear the cost associated with its mitigation and management. This principle encompasses several key economic dimensions. The first is responsibility. The PPP assigned direct financial responsibility to the polluters for the environmental harm they cause. By internalizing these costs, it ensured that polluters account for the negative externalities of their action, promoting accountability and discouraging environmentally harmful practice. The second is related with the economic efficiency. By incorporating the environmental cost into production expenses, PPP encourages firms to optimize their operations to minimize pollution. This leads to more efficient resource utilizing and fosters innovations in a cleaner technology as companies seek cost-effective methods to reduce their environmental footprints. Next is related with the market correction. Pollution often results in a market failure where the true cost of the goods and services is not reflected in their prices. PPP correct these by ensuring that prices incorporate environmental costs, leading consumers and producers to make more informed choice that reflects the true societal cost of their consumption and production pattern. And the last is related with the balanced development. Implementing PPP promotes sustainable development by balancing economic growth with the environmental preservation. By making polluters financially accountable, it discourages environmentally degrading activities and encourages investment in sustainable practice, leading to a long-term economic and ecological benefits. This slide discusses about the balancing economic and environmental concern. Balancing economic and environmental concern necessitate a nuanced application of the Polluter-pay principle. This principle serves as a foundation for addressing the cost of environmental degradation by holding polluters financially accountable. Different implementation approaches yield varying degree of effectiveness across economic, environmental, and social dimensions. Market-based instruments such as the pollution taxes and the tradable permit are renowned for their economic efficiency. By internalizing the external cost of the pollution, these tools incentivize the businesses to adopt cleaner technology. Tradable permits, for instance, create a flexible market-driven mechanism that allows firms to achieve emission reduction in the most cost-effective manner. Command and control regulation excel in delivering the predictable environmental outcome. By establishing strict standard or limit these policies ensure compliance, thereby reducing the uncertainty in achieving the environmental target. However, they may lack the cost effectiveness and the flexibility that the market-based instrument offers. The liability regime stands out in promoting social equity. These systems directly addresses the harm caused to affected parties by mandating polluter to compensate victims. They play a pivot role in upholding the justice, particularly in case of involving significant environmental damage or the public health risks. Now we shall discuss about the polluter pay principle for developing countries with a special consideration. The polluter pay principle in the developing countries requires tailored approach to address unique socioeconomic challenges. These nations often grapple with the balancing environmental protection and economic growth, particularly in context to involving subsistence, livelihoods, small business, and export competitiveness. The subsistence livelihood forms the backbone of the rural economies in many developing countries. Implementing PPP must consider the vulnerability of these communities as strict environmental regulation could inadvertently threaten their survival. Policies should focus on the capacity building and providing alternative sustainable income source to ensure that the environmental accountability does not exacerbate the poverty. The next is small business are vital for economic development but often lack the resource to compile with the stringent environmental standards. PPP implementation should include financial incentives, technical support, and the phase compliance measure to enable small enterprises to transition towards a sustainable practice without jeopardizing their viability. The next is related with the export competitiveness is another critical consideration. Developing countries rely heavily on the export for the economic growth and the PPP policies must avoid imposing excessive costs that could undermine their global competitiveness. Investments in green technology and infrastructure supported by the international cooperation can help these nations align with the global environmental standard while maintaining their exports. This slide discusses about the adapting polluter pay principle for different contexts. Adapting the polluter pay principle to diverse contexts requires a strategic approach that balances environmental accountability with the socio-economic realities. This adaptability ensures effective implementation across varying legal, economic, and institutional landscape. First is full implementation of PPP is the most effective in regions with a robust legal framework and institutional capacity. It mandates that polluters bear the full cost of environmental damage, fostering accountability and encouraging sustainable practice. Next is related to phased implementation is suitable for developing regions or sectors with limited capacity. This approach allows gradual adoption, starting with the pilot projects to build experience and confidence. It minimizes the resistance and ensures smoother transitions to comprehensive enforcement. Next is about the targeted application, focuses on specific sector or environmental challenges where PPP can deliver maximum impact. For instance, applying PPP in a waste management or industrial emission ensure that resources are directed towards a critical area. And the last is related with the capacity building, which is essential for successful PPP adaptation. It involves training stakeholders, strengthening institutional framework, and fostering public awareness. This ensures effective enforcement and long-term sustainability. In conclusion, adapting PPP to different contexts requires a tailored approach that integrates full implementation, phase adoption, targeted application, and capacity building. This ensures that the principle achieves its dual goal of environmental protection and socio-economic development. Now let us try to understand the polluter pay principle for the environmental accountability. The polluter pay principle, that is PPP, serves as a fundamental pillar of the environmental governance, ensuring that those responsible for environmental degradation bear the financial burden of the prevention, control, and remediation. By internalizing environmental costs, PPP discourages the unsustainable practices and promotes a cleaner technology. Despite its widespread adoption, implementation challenges persist, particularly in the developing economies where regulatory enforcement and the financial constraints often hinders the effective compliance. As environmental crises intensify, the PPP's relevance continues to expand, addressing an array of pressing concerns including air and water pollution, waste management, climate change, agriculture sustainability, marine degradation, and the transboundary environmental harm. Urbanization and industrialization expansion have exacerbated ecological strain disproportionately affecting vulnerable communities including indigenous population who rely heavily on the natural resources. The failure to ensure PPP not only perpetuates the environmental harm but also exacerbates social inequality, making stringent implementation imperative. The PPP's effectiveness is shaped by various regulatory and economic mechanisms, including the pollution tax, emission trading scheme, liability regimes, and the command and control regulation. Each approach offers distinct advantages in ensuring environmental accountability while balancing economic growth. Moving forwards, integrating scientific innovation, corporate responsibility, and the community engagement will be essential in reinforcing PPP as a dynamic tool for sustainable development. By strengthening the enforcement mechanism and fostering international cooperation, the Polluter-pay principle can serve as a powerful instrument in mitigating environmental harm while ensuring that the true cost of the pollution is borne by those responsible rather than by society as large. Now let us discuss the main parameters that contributes for the Polluter-pay principle in environmental accountability. This slide discusses how Polluter-pay principle is applied for water pollution control. The pollution-pay principle, that is PPP, serve as a foundational framework in India's strategies to combat water pollution, ensuring that the entities responsible for environmental degradation bear the cost associated with mitigation and remediation. This principle is operationalized through several key mechanisms. The first one is the industrial effluent standards. The Water Preservation and Control Pollution Act of 1974 empowers regulatory bodies to set stringent effluent standards for industries, dictating permissible pollutant levels in the wastewater discharge. These standards compel industry to implement effective treatment solutions to comply with the legal threshold, thereby reducing the environmental impact of industrial activities. The next is related with the effluent treatment plant, that is ETP. To adhere to establish effluent standards, industries are mandates to install effluent treatment plant, that is ETP. These facilities treat wastewater on site, removing contamination before releasing it into the water bodies. The implementation and the maintenance of ETP are critical responsibilities of polluting entities, aligned with the PPP by internalizing the cost of pollution control. The next is related with the Common Effluent Treatment Plant, that is CETP. For a cluster of small-scale industries lack individual resource for standalone ETP, Common Effluent Treatment Plant offers a collective solution. By sharing the financial and operational responsibility, these industries can effectively manage wastewater treatment, ensuring compliance with the environmental standards while distributing cost equitability among the polluter. The next is related with the water cess. The Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Cess Act of 1977 introduced a financial levy on the water consumption by industries, generating funds for pollution control initiative. This cess incentives industries to minimize water usage and invest in the treatment technology, reinforcing the PPP by linking water consumption directly to the pollution mitigation efforts. Through this integrated approach, India endeavors to balance industrial development with the environmental stewardship, ensuring that polluters are held financially accountable for their impact on the water resources. In continuation from the previous slide, this slide discusses about the polluter-pay principle in air pollution control. The PPP is a key environmental policy tool in India, ensuring that those responsible for air pollution bear the cost of prevention, mitigation, and control. This principle is enforced through stringent for emission standards. India follows a National Ambient Air Quality Standard NAAQS set by the Central Pollution Control Board CPCB to regulate air pollutants like particulate matters, that is PM, nitrogen oxide, that is NOx, and the sulfur dioxide, that is SO2. Industries and the power plants are required to comply with the emission norms through technologies like fuel gas desulfurization (FGD) and continuous emission monitoring system, that is CEMS. The next is vehicular pollution. The Bharat stage, that is BS, emission standard regulates the vehicular emission with BS4 norms implemented in 2020, significantly reducing the pollutants like sulfur and nitrogen oxide. The faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, that is FAME scheme, promotes cleaner transport alternative. The next is related with the green tax. A green tax is levied in older polluting vehicles to discourage their use and fund air quality improvement program. This tax varies by vehicle type and age, promoting a transition to cleaner fuel. The next is related with the industrial emission. Industries must comply with the strict air pollution norms and install emission control technology like electrostatic precipitators and scrubber. Non-compliance leads to financial penalties, ensuring industries internalize the environmental cost of pollution. By enforcing PPP, India ensured that the polluters contribute to air quality management, balancing economic development and environmental sustainability. Now we shall discuss about the polluter-pay principle in the waste management. The polluter-pay principle play a crucial role in India's waste management framework, ensuring that the waste generated bear the financial responsibility for waste collection, treatment, and disposal. It applies to solid waste, plastic waste, electronic waste, that is e-waste, and the biomedical waste management through various regulatory measures. The first is related with the solid waste management. The solid waste management rule of 2016 mandate that the urban local bodies and the waste generators, including the industries and the households, segregate and responsible disposal of the waste. Extended producer responsibilities, that is EPR, requires bulk waste generator to fund collection and processing. The next is related with the plastic waste management. Under the plastic waste management rule of 2016, manufacturers and the brand owners must implement EPR mechanism to ensure plastic collection and recycling. The ban on single-use plastic and the introduction of the plastic credit promotes circular economy practice. Next is related with the e-waste management. The e-waste management rule of 2016 placed responsibility on producers for collecting and recycling electronic waste. They must comply with the target for the waste recovery through authorized recyclers. Non-compliant results in financial penalties, reinforcing PPP. And the last one is related with the biomedical waste. The Biomedical Waste Management Rule of 2016 mandates the healthcare facilities to safely treat infection waste through incineration or deep burial. Compositing or organic waste is encouraged to reduce the landfill dependency. By integrating PPP into waste management, India ensures that the polluter finance waste disposal, fostering environmental responsibility and sustainability. Now we shall discuss about the polluter-pay principle and the climate change mitigation. India has been exploring carbon taxes and emission trading system, that is ETS, To regulate the industrial emission, carbon taxes directly charges emitter based on their greenhouse gas emission, internalizing the environmental costs. The perform, achieve, and the trade, that is PAT scheme, a market-based ETS for energy efficiency, allow industries to trade energy saving certificate, encouraging the emission reduction in a cost-effective manner. Sectorial impact, that is the power sector, coal-based power plant faces penalties under the environmental regulation with a coal cess now subsumed under the GST compensation cess, initially imposing a levy on a coal production to fund clean energy initiative. Industry. Energy intensive industry must comply with the energy efficiency target and adopt cleaner technology under the PAT scheme. Transport. The green tax on the older vehicle discourages pollution, while incentives for electric vehicle under the FAME scheme promotes cleaner mobility. Buildings. Energy efficient buildings codes encourages low carbon footprint through sustainable construction practices. Agriculture policy targeting crop residues burning and promoting methane reduction in a livestock farming helps mitigate emission. Well, this slide discusses the most burning topic on polluter pay principle and the marine pollution. The polluter pay principle plays a crucial role in addressing the marine pollution by holding polluters financially accountable for the damage they cause. This principle is applied through regulatory framework, cleanup mandates, and compensation mechanism across various sources of marine pollution. The first is related with the oil spill. The oil spills from the tankers, offshore drilling, and the pipelines leaks cause severe environmental damage. India enforces the oil spill contingency plan under the Indian Coast Guard, requiring polluters to cover cleanup costs and the compensation for the ecological damage. The International Oil Pollution Compensation, that is IOPC funds, also provides financial liabilities mechanism for oil spill incidents. The next is related with the ship generated waste. The commercial ship discharges waste including ballast, water, hazardous substance, and the sewage. The MARPOL Convention adopted by India mandates ships to manage their waste properly with penalties for non-compliance. Ports provide waste reception facilities and the polluter bears the cost of waste disposal. Next is related with the land-based marine pollution. Industrial effluent, untreated sewage, and agricultural runoff contributes to marine pollution, particularly in the coastal area. The Coastal Regulation Zone, that is CRZ notification, impose strict waste discharge norms, ensuring industries and municipalities treat wastewater before releasing it into the marine ecosystem. The next is related with the floating plastic pollution. Plastic waste from the rivers and the coastal cities accumulates in ocean, threatening marine life. Extended producer responsibility, that is EPR law, under the plastic waste management rule, mandate manufacturer to fund plastic collection and recycle. Coastal cleanup program and the penalties on the plastic dumping further enforces for polluter pay principle. Now we shall discuss the polluter pay principle and the transboundary pollution. The PPP plays a crucial role in addressing the transboundary pollution in India, where environmental challenges often extended beyond the national borders. The principle mandate polluters to bear the cost of environmental damage, fostering accountability and sustainable practice. International principles. The international principles provide the foundation for managing transboundary pollution. Agreements like the Rio Declaration emphasize the need for the states to prevent significant harm to neighboring countries through due diligence and environmental impact assessment. These principles encourage cooperation and shared responsibility among the nations. The next is related with the bilateral agreements that are vital for addressing pollution issues between India and its neighbors. For instance, the Indus Water Treaty between the India and Pakistan governs water resource management, ensuring equitability use and minimizing pollution. Similarly, agreement with the Bangladesh focus on managing shared river systems like Gangas and Brahmaputra, promoting sustainable practices and reducing transboundary pollution. Next is related with the regional framework that offers a collaborative approach to tackling pollution across South Asia. Initiatives like the National Clean Air Program, that is NCAP, in India recognize the importance of regional air quality management, addressing pollution sources that impact multiple jurisdictions. These frameworks emphasize interstate coordinate and shared responsibility to improve the air quality and mitigate transboundary pollution. In conclusion, the PPP, supported by international principle, bilateral agreement, and the regional framework, provides a robust mechanism for addressing the transboundary pollution in India. One of the most interesting topics is to relate pollution pay principle with natural resource management. The PPP is the vital framework in India natural resource management, ensuring that the resource users bear the environmental cost of their activities. This principle is implemented through mechanisms such as resource extraction tax are levied on the industries like mining to account for the environmental degradation caused by the resource extraction. These taxes incentivize efficient resource use and the fund restoration projects. Next is royalties are payment made by the companies for their right to extract natural resources. In India, mining companies are required to pay royalties which contribute to the local development and environmental conservation efforts. Next is related with the environmental bond that are financially guaranteed, ensuring that the companies undertake environmental restoration after resource extraction. For instance, mining companies must pay for the land reclamation, which forest operations are obliged to fund reforestation initiatives. The last one is related with the additional fishing operation that faces penalties for exceeding quotas, promoting sustainable practices and promoting marine ecosystem. These measures ensure that the environmental costs of resource use are internalized, preventing their externalities to the society or the future generations. Urban growth is one of the most important topic under Polluter-pay principle for urban planning and development. The Polluter-pay principle is becoming a cornerstone of urban planning and development, driving cities toward the sustainable and environmental responsible growth by ensuring that the polluters bear the cost of their environmental impact. PPP fosters accountability and incentivizes green practices. Let us see one by one the waste management system that are prime example of PPP in action. Cities are adopting volume-based pricing model where the waste generator pay according to the amount of the waste they produce. This approach not only reduces waste generation but also promotes recycling and resource efficiency. Next is related with the stormwater management fee that are another innovative application of PPP. These fees are calculated based on the impervious surfaces area of properties such as the driver's way and the rooftop, which contribute to stormwater runoff. By linking fee to runoff potential, cities encourages property owner to adopt permeable surface and the green infrastructure. Next is related with the congestion charges. The congestion charges for vehicle in high traffic zone exemplify PPP in urban mobility. These charges discourages excessive vehicle use, reduce traffic congestions, and the lower emission, promoting the use of public transportation and sustainable travel option. In conclusion, the PPP in urban planning integrates economic environmental consideration, creating cities that are not only livable but also resilient. These applications demonstrate how PPP can transform urban environments into model of sustainability and innovations. Now, as we arrive at the final slide of this presentation, let us reflect on the key topics covered today. We begin with an introduction of Polluter-pay principle, exploring its philosophical underpinning and its role promoting environmental justice and accountability. This was followed up by in-depth discussion on policy tools and application, emphasizing the core concept of internalizing environmental cost and comparing various implementation approaches. Subsequently, we examined the challenges associated with implementation alongside the economic rationale behind PPP, that is Polluter-pay Principles, its broader economic dimensions, and the direct task of the balancing economic growth with the environmental responsibility, with a particular attention to the unique challenge faced in developed nations. We also explored PPP framework adapt across the different contexts, applying it to pressing environmental concerns such as water and air pollution, waste management, climate change mitigation, marine and transboundary pollution, natural resources management, and urban planning. Over the course of my last three presentations, we have extensively discussed India's application of the Polluter-pay principle, highlighting its significance as a key instrument for sustainable environmental governance and justice. Now, as we transition to our next discussion, it is imperative to examine the real-world impact of these principles. So I invite you to stay connected with this channel as we delve into the new topics next week, from pollution to protection, the impact of Polluter's Pay Principle, where we will analyze the case studies and real-world examples. Until then, I wish you all well, stay safe with your loved ones. See you soon.